because death took so long to make its way through the survivors, these people went on to have families. Families that they never should have had. Death is coming for us because we were never supposed to exist.
Some of the best moments in movies aren't accidents. They might feel spontaneous, but every camera angle and every detail could be a part of a hidden trail of breadcrumbs left behind for you to discover. And one of the best recent examples of a movie that does this was Final Destination Bloodlines, the sequel that blew fans away after being silent for over a decade. Some clever minds took the franchise, re-engineered the mechanics, and went batshit with the amount of hidden clues scattered throughout the cinematography. In Final Destination Bloodlines, we follow Stephanie as she tries to protect her remaining family tree from becoming the next victims of death's design. And we already know the drill with these movies, so when the directors go the extra mile to get creative, I gotta talk about it. During the filming of Bloodlines, the directors used a motif they called the circles of death. This technique led to them hiding a lot of literal and symbolic forms of circles in the movie. For example, the grandmother's name in the movie is Iris. Iris is also the colored ring around your pupil. Iris almost died on a circular dance floor inside of the Skyview restaurant, which was a circular building in the film, inspired by Seattle's Space Needle. There's even a scene in the movie that purposely transitions between the circular dance floor and Iris's eye. But see, those are just examples of some of the literal circles in the film. Wait till we start talking about the metaphorical circles, because that's where things really get interesting. Throughout this analysis, we'll continue to reveal the circles of death in Bloodlines, and I'm going to walk you through how the directors used these circles to tie every death back into the grand design, and how this motif reshapes the way we see fate unravel on screen. Now, there's many other Easter eggs and callbacks to other Final Destination films throughout this movie, but this video will primarily focus on the topic at hand, starting with the penny. The movie begins and ends with the penny, not just a circular shaped object, but an object that travels in a circle. It's the one key item that's supposed to trigger Iris's death before she escaped, and it comes back around once again at the end of the film to trigger the deaths of her remaining descendants. The creators leaned into two of the most famous myths about the penny. First, the idea that dropping a penny from high enough could kill someone, and second, that a single penny on the tracks could derail a train. In this scene, we actually see the penny derail a train, so they actually made that one happen. What we don't get to see though is it falling fast enough to kill someone outright, but it does fall in a way that sets off a chain of deaths, which in my opinion is close enough. Circles kill. That was the phrase the directors jokingly repeated to each other while filming. Their obsession with circles in the film is why we have close-up shots like the tambourine at the Skyview restaurant, and the creme brulee cracking foreshadowing how the floor will crack, along with several other circles in the cinematography of this opening kill. And there's the metaphorical circles like Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire playing when Iris and Paul first arrive, which is an omen that foreshadows their death. And also there's events like these.
Oh, I'm sorry, but we're already over capacity for opening night.
Please.
You're tearing me apart, but I'm sorry, I can't help you.
Step back! We're already over capacity!
Where the maitre d' initially denies Paul's service, saying that the restaurant is at capacity. But karma comes back around and now he gets denied entry to the elevator due to limited capacity, the same reason he just gave Paul. And also there's Iris's ring, which is placed on her finger in a very graceful way in the beginning, and later we come back around to see it being peeled off in a very gruesome way. Then, in our first introduction to Stephanie, our main character, she's having a nightmare or premonition, vision of her grandmother's death. But if you look closely, you'll see that she's framed in the middle of a circle of students in class. It's almost like the film is pulling a sleight of hand. The nightmare of her grandmother's premonition/death is the flashy distraction, while the real trick is happening in plain sight. Stephanie is unknowingly trapped in a human circle of death, formed by her classmates, a visual omen hiding in the background like a magician's misdirection. This type of blocking in this scene makes her introduction feel like a ritualistic spotlight. And blocking is just the proper term for the placement or movement of characters in a scene in relation to the camera. And here it shows how fate is already closing in around her. That night, once she gets home, we see a circular shaped shelf behind her. Now, to most viewers, this is presumably a very mundane and unimportant detail. But Zach and Adam told the production designer to add in as many literal circles in the film as possible because once again, circles kill. That was their motto for the film. Later, once we're introduced to Stephanie's brother Charlie coming down the stairs, we come back to this same shot later before their deaths at the end of the film. Now, once Stephanie goes to visit her Uncle Howard and Aunt Brenda to ask about her grandma Iris, you'll also spot circular imagery in some of these scenes. But the most important subtlety here that we'll come back around to is seeing Howard with the lawnmower. At Iris's funeral, we see a groundskeeper in the background cutting the grass, and originally there was even a shot where we could see the lawnmower going through Howard's head at a distance, going through one ear and out the other, to show us how we'd eventually come back to Howard dying by his lawnmower in the backyard. Also, there's the big circular trampoline in his death scene, which served as a tool of misdirection since we originally were led to believe that his death scene would in some way involve the trampoline, but it doesn't. The rake underneath the trampoline needed to be moved to set everything into motion, but the trampoline itself only served as a misdirection tactic. Now, if we go back to Iris and really focus on the way she died, you'll notice something important. She was impaled straight through the head and mouth. It mirrors the exact fate she would have suffered 56 years earlier in the Skyview disaster. In other words, her death comes full circle. Another deliberate metaphorical circle planted by the directors. Now, next up to go is Julia, who's knocked into a garbage bin and crushed by the compactor. Only afterwards do we realize what set it into motion. She was struck in the head by a circular object, another quiet nod to the film's circle motif. Then next in the sequence of deaths, there's Eric and Bobby. Bobby's death is foreshadowed earlier by the image of his shirt of a rabbit on a pogo stick spring at the cookout, and of course he's later killed by the spring from the vending machine. There's even a hole, a circular hole, left in the vending machine by Eric that perfectly aligns with the MRI machine so the spring could break through the glass and kill Bobby. Then for Eric, his death was foreshadowed back at the tattoo parlor on the back wall. There was a large red circle and a large image of a magnet that served as a sign of the MRI machine. Now, if you've seen Final Destination Bloodlines, which I hope you have if you're watching this video, you know that Eric has a different father, which means he isn't part of Death's design for this family tree.
Eric isn't Howard's biological son.
Who's my real dad?
Jerry Fenbury.
Oh!
This is why you always wanted to play catch?
Oh.
That makes this the first Final Destination movie to explore what happens when someone outside the victim list tries to interfere. This shows that death possibly treats interference itself as a punishable act. And to throw in some additional fun facts or Easter eggs, Eric's death also pays homage to the Final Destination 5 poster with multiple rods impaling the skull, which they are also impaling the tattoo of a skull on his stomach. The tattoo parlor's door displayed the address 1969. That is the same year of the Skyview accident. And the tattoo parlor itself is called Marked, which foreshadows that Eric himself is marked for death. You just gotta love all the attention to detail. Then we have Darlene's death, Stephanie's mom, who actually dies in the same location as Iris, Darlene's mom. Earlier in the film, when Stephanie goes to visit her grandmother Iris, we get a slow pan of the circular area of water near the house, which is the director's way of telling us how this area will serve a greater purpose later. And that greater purpose is where we, the audience, was tricked into believing that Stephanie had pulled a Kimberly Corman from Final Destination 2 and cheated death by drowning and being resuscitated. But of course, at the end of the film, we find out that she didn't cheat death because her heart didn't stop.
Steph, I want you to meet Jenny's dad, Dr. Reddick.
And I understand he's quite the lifesaver.
He brought me back from the dead.
What?
Well, technically you weren't dead. If you were unconscious and Charlie got you breathing again, then your heart didn't stop.
So she wasn't dead.
Exactly.
This is explained to her by the character Dr. Reddick, which is a character that pays homage to the original creator of Final Destination, Jeffrey Reddick. But once Stephanie tries to get the remaining members of her family to Iris's safe house, of course things don't go as planned, resulting in Darlene's untimely death, which is her being crushed by a light pole. And this is sort of foreshadowed at Iris's funeral, where we get a clear visual of the down arrow on Darlene's jacket, possibly suggesting that she's going down or how something is coming down on her. Now, I know you're probably thinking, well, where's the circle here? The arrow on her jacket could be seen as a metaphorical circle, since we eventually come back to something coming down on her. But there was actually more of a literal circle involved in Darlene's death. In the original script, Darlene doesn't actually make it to Iris's safe house, and instead she dies at the hospital. And at the entrance to the hospital, there's a revolving door. Revolving doors spin in a circle. This was originally where Darlene was going to die. So basically, after Eric and Bobby's death, Darlene would die once they all were leaving the hospital. But the directors ultimately decided that they wanted Darlene to sort of have a redemption arc, where she would stick around and help her kids to try to make up for lost time, since she wasn't really around much when they were younger, which honestly I think I agree with that decision by the creators. But then lastly, we have the death of Stephanie and Charlie. The directors took a classic Final Destination approach by pretending to end the film on a hopeful note, but us Final Destination veterans saw the deaths coming from a mile away. Because very rarely, and I mean very rarely, does a main character ever get to survive a Final Destination film. Because if I'm not mistaken, that has only ever happened once. But everything plays out where Stephanie is taking Charlie to pick up Jenny to go to the prom. And since we already know about the penny on the tracks, we now have to acknowledge the prick of blood on Stephanie's finger, which is reminiscent of Iris and Paul in the beginning. Then we see that old red 1967-ish Plymouth Belvedere again from the beginning of the film. The old woman who picks up the penny from the hospital allows it to travel to where it needs to be by the end of the movie. In the film, she picks it up after Stephanie drops it while hugging Darlene and Charlie. But in the original script, the old woman actually picks up the penny after Darlene drops it after dying in the revolving door at the hospital. So although the events do play out a little differently, everything still came around full circle. And now to wrap things up on a couple of fun blink and you'll miss it moments, right before the train derails and kills Stephanie and Charlie, the directors gave us a quick glimpse of the logs on the back of the train, foreshadowing what's actually going to kill them. So although we the audience think the train is what's going to kill them, it's another classic misdirection technique. Then there's the number 0513 on the front of the train, which is a very special date, May 13th. This is the same day Alex and Kimberly from Final Destination 1 and 2 had their premonitions for Flight 180 and Route 23.
A candlelight vigil to mark the one-year anniversary of the crash of Flight 180 will be held at 8 p.m. tonight at the Mount Abraham High School Auditorium.
And I'm sure there's many other circle motifs that I may have missed. And even the directors have mentioned that there's Easter eggs in the film that the production team added that they themselves don't even know about. And this was actually done on purpose because the directors Adam and Zach told the production team that they didn't even want to know about them, leaving behind secrets for themselves because before they got the job to direct this film, they were already hardcore Final Destination fans at heart. So there is a lot more to discover in this movie, and it's just like Bloodworth said in Final Destination 1.
Death. There are no accidents, no coincidences, no mishaps, and no escapes.
So as I've said, some of the best moments in movies aren't accidents. They might feel spontaneous, but every camera angle and every detail could be a part of a hidden trail of breadcrumbs left behind just for you to discover.